Hello again. This is Chris Ott, and this continuing series, What Mayor Baba Really Taught. And this is part 4. And we've made some changes. The format, I found out that this camera can only shoot 29 minutes. So if some of the early videos I did cut off early, it's because of that. But that's fine. I'm going to do these more like 17, 18 minutes would be good, because I find I like videos that are short myself. The other thing is I finally got this microphone I was looking forward, the microphone accessories I was looking forward to getting, like this nice stand that moves, and this what's called a shock mount to eliminate vibration. And anyway, let's continue on. So I was said in part 3 a little of my background and why I have a unique perspective on Meher Baba. There are other reasons, but one is that I studied philosophy when I was 40. I already knew about Baba. I have a master's degree, and I was hearing the questions of philosophy for the first time with a background in Baba, so that's unique. There were things that I could consider that my professors didn't have any way to even have ever heard of to consider as possibilities. So, but that's not how it went. I wasn't informing what they were teaching me. I was really taking it in. But only later, much later, did I really realize that Meher Baba had already worked around these problems that are the major problems of philosophy that I'm going to get into. And that's why his teaching, understood, is so dramatic and potentially really important for the development of mankind in having understanding of his universe and reality. Um, Now, the reason this is called What Meher Baba Really Taught is what motivates me are the many ways in which Meher Baba has been misunderstood that I've noticed all my life, and got increasingly bothering me over the years as I understood more, and I got to think about it longer. And so this series is dedicated to those parts of Meher Baba's teaching, which I haven't even gotten into his teaching, but I will. But I'm going to be emphasizing those things that are misunderstood and clarifying them rather than things that are easy to understand. So Meher Baba said that, one of the big problems of the world is greed, and, one of the big solutions of the world is love. Well, I don't need to explain that. That's very obvious. But a lot of people have said that. And we all kind of know that. And that's not putting down Baba saying it. I'm just saying that's not the kind of thing I'm going to be going over, that things that anybody can get that are really intuitive that way. And we've even heard them before. But the things that are new and that are hard to understand. So we're dealing with those aspects of Baba's teaching that are difficult. Okay, that's out of the way. Now, one of the first misunderstandings, and I only really realized this sort of recently, listening to Baba's followers. I do live right near the Meher Center, and I see them all the time. And I actually do the newsletter for the Avatar Meher Baba Circle of Friends, a community organization here in Myrtle Beach for the outside community off the center. Beyond the Meher Spiritual Center, there's a community of people that live around here, about 400 people, that are in some way affiliated with Meher Baba followers. And they've located here to be near the Meher Center in Myrtle Beach. And I see them and I hear them and I talk to them and I hear them talking to each other. And what I've learned, to my real surprise, is when it comes to teachings, one of the memes they say is that he didn't have any teachings. Well, that's not true, and I want to briefly cover that, because that's the whole point of my series is Meher Baba's teachings, uh, what Meher Baba really taught. And if you think that Baba didn't teach anything, well, then it's kind of moot. But I wanted to point out that it's very clear that he did, and get into a little why they might think that he didn't have any teachings. Meher Baba, in 1964, there was a World's Fair in New York. Baba was in India, but he prepared a pamphlet to be handed out at the 1964 World's Fair. And it had a message called the Universal Message, and you can still find that online. Meher Baba, his Universal Message. They still print the pamphlets, actually. And the message starts out, the Universal Message starts out, I have come not to teach but to awaken. And then it's a long message. But without getting into the message and analyzing it right now, maybe I will later, or what I think he meant by that. That could lead you to go, oh, well, he didn't have any teachings. He said, I've come not to teach, but to awaken. And what that means is not immediately obvious, but I'd like to compare it to some words by Jesus. Jesus said, I have come not to bring peace, but a sword. So most Christians don't take it that Jesus has come to, take up swords and kill people. He means something else. And also, when he says, I've come not to bring peace, well, Jesus is known as the Prince of Peace. And so, how could this be? Well, the way I look at that is Jesus is saying, I'm not here to just go along with the status quo, and be both peaceful about that. I am a game changer, a disruptor. And he disrupted the old order, the old pagan order, and he brought in new ideas like monotheism from, they already had that in Judaism, but in the pagan world, that was new, a kind of monotheism. And other things. And also the breaking up of the temple, and instead of slaughtering an animal as a central ritual, as in Judaism, and the Romans had similar. They would sacrifice a bull. But Jesus had them use himself symbolically to serve that same ritual role. Let me be the lamb that you sacrifice, but just do it symbolically. And this wine will be my blood, and this bread my flesh. And so that's also, taking things in a better direction. And, Buddha, before Jesus, was also against animal sacrifice, which was a big thing in Hinduism. So this is interesting. But anyway, so I would just say simply, if he comes not to teach but to awaken, in other words, his main purpose is to awaken people. But part of doing that is his teaching, which will help. It's part of the process of that awakening, because they will see the world, look upon things differently through a new teaching. But that's not the main purpose of the teaching. It's not just a sort of an intellectual exercise. It has a higher purpose, which is ultimately to lead to people's emancipation, which he goes into a lot what that means. And that's the awakening, that its real purpose. So his ultimate purpose is to awaken each individual. But part of awakening is this teaching. In fact, Baba gave so much teaching that you can see why he needed to say something like that. That it could almost seem like that's all I've just come to teach. But of all the things that Baba left behind when he passed away, Baba didn't play an instrument, he didn't sing, he didn't dance, he didn't write plays. So what do we have? We have his teachings. That's basically what we have. I think that following him is following his teaching, knowing his teachings, and so forth, and understanding them. There's also kind of an anti-understanding quality in the Meher Baba movement of followers. But we won't get into that. I can show quotes where Meher Baba says, try to understand my teaching. So I just have a couple quotes to prove that Baba, I have one like that. that Baba did have teachings. And in fact, not only had teachings, but he often mentioned his teachings. So that we can move on then. Okay, so here's one quote. My teachings are not like any religion or philosophy. If you are looking, he said this to a reporter, if you are looking to anything for close similarity, it would be a synthesis of Sufism, Zoroastrianism, and Vedantism. Uh, that's Lord Maher, print 1986 print edition, page 6232. And then there's this quote and about followers getting together, going over and learning his teachings. He goes, "It is helpful for my lovers to come together and think and talk about me, to discuss my teachings and messages, compare notes with each other, and cooperatively try to come closer to me in understanding and spirit." So definitely Baba is not very anti-understanding, is he? So you sort of get the picture of kind of like book clubs getting together and understanding his teaching and understanding them properly. So no one could make a case that I'm doing something that Baba was not about right off the bat, talking about his teachings. No, I have other quotes. I just used two to make the case. So that's good. That's the first misunderstanding. Now let's move on from that. Now, the next thing I want to explain is because it's central. It's sort of like the pivot and everything of Baba's teaching. And everything that he teaches orbits around this one idea, okay? And that one idea is God, all right? But God is different than in any other previous religion, okay, or philosophy. This is really unique, and to express what it is, I'm going to go over some of the history of concepts of God, so that we see what he isn't teaching, these older ones, and then we'll see the dramatic difference of his. All right, so let's go back to the beginning of mankind's interest in things that are invisible, and the sort of the feeling that people have that there's something greater than themselves that they can't see exactly, and they don't know what it is, and they want to give it a name and an expression. Sometimes they want to worship it. Well, the first time we see that expressed in anthropology is we see peoples in ancient times made little models of their gods, and or we could call them animal spirits, or they had animal and human spirits, and they painted them or they carved them onto their utilitarian objects, their knives and their bows and arrows and shields and so forth. They had these pictures of what they think are gods and little statuettes, and these were invisible sprites and so forth and spirits. And one of the benefits of having the idea of these spirits is that there are things in the world that we see, phenomena, and we want to explain it because it makes the world much more, it makes us calmer to have some explanation of things. And so if you see volcanoes and, the stars and so forth, you can explain them in terms of spirits. The spirits are responsible for them. And then you can have a story which becomes a myth, and then the myth is the explanation. And the myths, according to Joseph Campbell, a myth is a story that includes gods. So they were gods. And like I said, they were sometimes animals, figures, sometimes human. And then gradually, sometimes they were a mix, as we know. The Egyptians had mixes, and so did the Greeks, of animal and human icons. And in time, the emphasis moved away from the animal spirits and toward the human. And these become pantheons of gods. And now, beyond just being able to explain the world, the next benefit of having gods that are like us, they're anthropomorphic, we imagine them like people, is we can beseech their help, or we could at least what's called propitiate them. That means do something to gain their favor. So sacrifice an animal, make them happy, or bring gold, or kill a virgin, throw her in a volcano. I mean, I don't know if that ever really happened, but that's the idea. You propitiate the god, and then the god will be on your side, and then maybe the crops will grow or something. And then it's not just these massive propitiations. You also have people doing that individually, and have, like in Hinduism, like a puja, and then you bring food and you put it before a little statuette, and you hope to get the grace, either for spiritual benefit or for material benefit, or just protection. So that creates that sense. So there's that motivation for having these gods. And then there's a third reason to have gods, and that is that people seem to have a natural inborn feeling that there is something higher than themselves, what we call the divine, and they project that into these forms, and it gives them a way to worship that. Okay, rather than worshiping a complete abstraction. You can picture the animal or the human form of the god. And so that's sort of where we were for a long time. And then certain prophets came along, and they said, well, really, there's only one God. And then this is kind of where we were at the time of Jesus and Muhammad. There's one God. There's not a lot of gods. There's all those other gods are either very minor gods, not really gods, they're demigods or something. But there's this one God that's the most important, and they give that one the name, either just the name God or Yahweh or Allah or some name. Or okay, so that's called monotheism. Now, probably most people would think that Meher Baba is a monotheist, but he's not. Meher Baba never used the word monotheism. Baba would never say there is a God, because the word "a" in that sentence is an indefinite article in grammar, and it implies that it is a thing, a discrete thing among other discrete things. Okay. Now there's it took me a while to learn this. My daughter didn't know what I meant by discrete, and looking it up, I found out there's actually two meanings of the word discrete, depending on how you spell it. But ETE, discrete, means something separate. Okay. Let me just quickly, I thought I put that here, but yeah. Discreet with EET means sort of being careful around people, being discreet, or being secretive. But discrete with DISCRETE means individually separate and distinct. So to say there is a God implies a discrete object. It's a thing among other things. So there's us, and there's our souls, and there's the world, and then there's also a God. Okay? And even if you spell that with a capital G, that's where it comes from. It comes from the idea that we once thought in terms of many gods, and now we think of just one, or a God. So people always say, do you believe in a God, that there's a God? But it doesn't matter if they say, do you believe in God? They mean the same thing. Do you believe in God? They mean, do you believe in something out there, something other, something else? Okay? Often they talk just like that. There's something that transcends us, that's, higher. Okay? It's another thing. Okay? So that's not what Baba teaches. What Baba teaches is that there is only God. Only God. Now, that doesn't mean that Exactly. I'll explain the difference. It doesn't mean that this has got to be God because it's only God. That's called pantheism, and that's not what he teaches. And people have argued with me, but Baba actually, it came up, and Baba said, no, I am not a pantheist. That is not my opinion. So he's clearly said he's not a pantheist. Pantheist is a philosopher named Spinoza, made pantheism popular. In pantheism, God is equated with the universe. But that's not what he's saying. He's saying that not just the universe, but all phenomena. I have to define this. Although philosophers watching this will know what I mean, but most people don't. The word a phenomenon, often means for people just some strange event that took place. You know, well, that's a really weird phenomenon, like a flying saucer or something. But in philosophy, the word phenomena or phenomenon, it just refers to anything that you perceive. And that can be perceived in your mind or perceived with your five senses. So if I close my eyes and I imagine the color red, that is a phenomenon. Okay, so phenomena is anything you experience. And if I hear thinking about geometry, that is phenomena. Anything that is experience, the objects of experience are phenomena. All for Baba, all objects of experience are illusory. Now, I'm going to get really into this so that you can really grasp why they're illusory and the sense in which he means this. And that's the sense there's only God. Well, what's God then? If we can't perceive God, that's one of the arguments against God. Well, we can't perceive him. You could say that God is the perceiving itself. So the seeing itself. So this is often said, like he's not the seer or the seen, but the seeing. Okay, this is said by yogis and things in Advaita Vedanta and so forth. It's not uncommon, but it's uncommon for Westerners, and they don't have any way to make it make sense, even in the Vedanta. I'm going to show how Baba actually made that kind of be a rational idea. How there could be illusory phenomena, and yet the perceiving of it or the conscious experiencing of it is a real phenomenon. Okay. Now, so in a way, there's in Baba there isn't there isn't a God. There's only God. And I once said to my daughter, like, I said, see, what I'm saying is so dramatic. There is no God. There's only God. And she said, oh my God, you've been telling me that since I was 5 years old. You don't know that this is like your line. I thought, oh, I guess that's my line. So if Descartes said, you know, I think therefore I am, and Berkeley said esse is percipi, some line, mine would be, there is no God, there's only God. That's really what Baba teaches. So this idea of God is generally connotes a discrete thing. And that's not what Baba teaches. Baba teaches that he's the only thing, and that everything else is an illusion. So, now, okay, I'm going to go from here. I'm not sure what I'm going to do next. I have to think about it, but we're at the end of our minutes, so I'm going to stop now and continue, and we're going to get a better intuition of what we mean by this new sense. And we're going to go into a lot of other things that are interesting. But Baba lovers often misunderstand this, and they really do think that there's a God. And they think that when Baba says, I am God, there's a real misunderstanding there. They think that sort of God is Baba. And they think that he's now like a discrete object somewhere in some other dimension or something, and you talk to him and try and connect with him, and it's always separate. But really, God's saying that God is your own self. God is the one that's speaking to God. And I'll just give this one line. Paramatma is another word for God in some of Baba's books. So to understand that. It is Paramatma that speaks through the mouth of one and listens through the ears of another. There's only God. Baba even points out that even to say there's only one God still implies that there could be other gods. So it's better to just talk about there's only God. And then Baba says another line saying the same things. God is that one playing innumerable roles. So he's experiencing himself as me giving this talk, and he's experiencing himself as you hearing it. And I'm going to go more into this, but I'm not sure where to go now. So let's end here, and I'll continue in part 5. All right, see you later. Bye bye.